Okay, so I just wanted to make another video. I'm gonna try to make this one shorter, but I just want to explain something really important. we went through how we got from Adam and Eve and how we got all the 70 nations, and where the blessing flowed through. Shem should also, Seth should also be in red, but whatever. We get to Avraham, who was Avram, and then he got the Hay from God's name added to him, and he became Avraham, and he got taken out of this whole system because of the sin of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, where they changed reality, and the reality fell to a more physical nature, and there's a system, a natural system, that kind of is in charge of the system. So let's explain that again a little bit more. The 70 nations, again, we said that for everything physical, there's something spiritual, and vice versa. So we also explained that the spiritual and the spiritual and the physical interact like a candle and a flame to create light. And we also explained that there's a klipa, something separating us, an impurity. And this impurity, basically, it has there's a continuum from, it's like evil to holy. And there's a separation between the evil and the holy, and we're commanded as Bnei Israel to recognize that difference and mark it every Shabbat, and in the Havdalah also, to say that there's a difference between Kodesh, holy, and Chol, not holy. There's a difference between Am Yisrael and all the other nations. That's what's in our prayers that we say, and that's what we say on Havdalah. Just to remember that there's a difference between the nations and the nation of Israel, which Israel, as you know, the nation of Israel got taken out of Mitzrayim by God to be a holy nation unto him, unto God, to serve God in this reality. And that we know that there is another world after this. It is all emet. That's all emet, and that this world is a lie. There's a lie in it, because the sin caused the information, the good and the evil, to be mixed. It caused everything to be mixed, and so it's difficult to understand what's good and evil in this world. But in the eternal world of truth, it will be very obvious. And when the Mashiach comes, it's also going to be very obvious. So what I wanted to explain was that the 70 nations, so there's something physical and spiritual and physical. So the 70 nations basically there are 70 ministering angels, or angels, that are in charge of each nation. But because God took us out of the system, he took us for himself. So God oversees the nation of Israel personally, on a national level, but also on a personal level. We all have a personal, or can have a personal relationship with God, and he cares about us personally, but he also cares about us as a nation. And there's certain rules and certain everything that we have to follow, but not so much for these nations. They're under the influence of the fate of the horoscopes, the stars, the zodiac, the natural things that happen, fate, and also that's also determined by the 70 angels that are on top of them in the spiritual world. Okay, so for example, there was a story about a big rabbi that after the Holocaust, and we can talk about the Holocaust later, okay, that we said, okay, Yafet, the son of Noah, had Gomer and Yavan, and I forgot to mention that Gomer, we know that Gomer is Germany, the Germanic tribe Again, everyone mixed together. But after the Shoah, after the Holocaust, he moved to Canada. And somebody asked him, well, why did you go to Canada? And he said, because I'm ministering it. The angel overseeing Canada is a peaceful angel. Now, all these angels can change, by the way. I guess they change sometimes, you know, depending on the merit of the nation itself, on the physical. Because again, the physical and the spiritual interact like a flame and a candle. So depending on the deeds of the nations, they get different, I guess, their angels can change. But the nation of Israel is always overseen by Hashem. Hashem takes care of us personally. And same too with Israel, the land of Israel. The land of Israel, God has eyes on that land all the time. And so for here, if you're living in one of these nations, one of the nations of the 70 nations, I mean, if you're living in the land, then when you pray, let's just talk about the Jews. When a Jew prays, it has to go up to their angel, and their angel has to bring it up to God. And it depends on the merit of the community and the merit of the individuals. And there's all sorts of other things that prayers and everything depends on, and blessings. So it's a two-way street again. So you bring your prayers up to God, and he brings a blessing down to you. And if you're outside of Israel, then it has to go through the angel that's on top of that nation where you are. But in Israel, it goes straight to God. And because of that, I just want to let you know personally that is why I came this time back to Israel to be religious here in Israel, because during Corona, before Corona, like I explained, in about 2015, 2016, when I started to understand that about Judaism more and want to practice that as my spiritual practice, I understood, excuse me, that especially this line, Ham, is very evil. Like we said, they are Satanists. And again, I explained that Hashem, God only creates, and God is 100% good, and he only creates, but people have to die, and so he had to create an angel that would do that. Okay, so we also know we've heard about the angel of death, and there's all sorts of, like, the whole spiritual reality that we can't see, and we have to learn about if we want to understand what's happening. But Ham, their line started serving the angel of death, who is Satan. And Satan is also the overseer of Esav's line. He's a ministering angel. He's the ministering angel of Esav's line. And so a lot of the things that I see, because we know that this world is a lie, and these people are basically in charge of this world, because that's their inheritance through Esav, and they don't have the blessing of the afterlife, the eternal life. So this life, which is temporary, because we live for maximum 120 years these days. Okay, that's what we're given, 120 years, and depends on your deeds and a lot of different things, or how old you are. But at the end of this life, the body and the soul separate, and the soul goes somewhere spiritual, and the body goes back to the dust of the earth. So the other nations have this life. They can do whatever they want. They basically had to only follow 7 laws of Noah. But because Israel, the children of Israel, accepted the Torah, and we can go into that again. I can show you the line. Out of Levi came Moshe, and Moshe got the Torah for us, because Moshe was, I'm going to explain a little bit more about, actually the point of this was to explain a little bit about circumcision and the covenant of the Brit. But it's helpful to understand all these other things, because now we know that like the spiritual and the natural world with its system of fate and astrology and the zodiac and all the other forces that are created, they are natural forces, and they have power, but they have power that God gave them, because God gave them to run this world, this reality, this physical reality, which eventually is going to end. Like we said, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's everything is kind of like in this system where there's 7 days of the week, and this is Shabbat. And Shabbat is the blessing for all these other weeks, or all these other days. There's also every 7 years in Israel, there's a Shemitah where the land rests. So it's all about Shabbat. And basically also we're told that there's going to be only 7 millennia in this cycle of this system, where the 7th millennial is a messianic. Already we're in the messianic age, and then the world is upright again with the king of Israel on top of the world, on top of the other nations, and we get the blessing from God, and we get the abundance, and then we give it to everybody. Here, the world is upside down. Here, basically, you're sociopaths and you're psychopaths. I read a book once about that. There's like a certain percentage of the total population that are just sociopaths and psychopaths, and they get ahead in the world, in your business, in your whatever, because they're ruthless. They don't have any laws. They don't care about the laws. And I mean, now might be a good time to introduce Sodom and Gomorrah. That was a place during Abraham's time, and it was the most prosperous place. They were very, very rich, and they also had a beautiful, beautiful area. And they were basically lawless in a way. They had their own law, similar to maybe this law. They were sodomites, obviously. Hence, that's where that word came from, sodomites. And their philosophy was, what's mine is mine, and what's yours is mine. And they didn't allow any visitors into the city, and I mean, it was completely corrupt. And so that's basically, if we look in today's world, getting back to 2015-16, when you start to notice, like, there are no laws in today's world. There's basically evil people at the top. They're all corrupt. All the politicians, everyone's corrupt. Look into the WEF, World Economic Forum. They're meeting right now to decide about our entire world, what they want. They want to have total control. They want digital currency, digital stores, digital everything. They were the ones that brought you the COVID scam. I'll talk about why I think that's a scam in another time, or why I mean, a lot of, like, look, the whole thing was to get us to accept the vaccine passports, which was just an introduction to the digital passports that they want to have, like we see in China, that you have a social credit system, and that if you are not affirming and adhering to what they tell you at the top, you will get nothing. There's no blessing. They don't have a blessing. They have to steal everything, and they keep it for themselves. So when the 7th millennial comes, it's going to be set back upright, like it was when King Solomon, when Joseph was king of the world in Egypt, and King Solomon was king from Israel, from Jerusalem, which is the holiest city in the world. So again, if we go back to the fact that there's 70 angels that are over the other nations and the other lands, and that God alone is directly interested in Israel and overseeing Israel, and the proper order of things is when the nation of Israel is in the land of Israel. We can talk about what the state of Israel is there. Remember, we also said that out of Mitzrayim came the Erev Rav, Rav, that mixed in. They're called the mixed multitude in English, and Erev Rav in Hebrew. And the Erev Rav came out with the Jews from Mitzrayim, and they're a very powerful group because they were the ones that had all the sorcery. There was 10 levels of sorcery in the world, and they had 9 in Mitzrayim, in Egypt. Now, Egypt was destroyed, and so was Canaan. These people, a lot of these people are destroyed, but some people still remain from the other lines. And Erev Rav was just a bunch of other people that learned sorcery in Mitzrayim, and they came out. They didn't die in Mitzrayim. They came out of Mitzrayim with the Jews, and the influence of the Jews all along history, all throughout our history. So now I'm just going to go back to the fact that there's the blessing from God that comes down through this line, and when it comes down to when we get to Abraham and he makes a covenant, he tells them to circumcise himself. So the male reproductive organ, in its perfect state in the Garden of Eden, Adam was created without the foreskin, which in Hebrew is called the Ola. Ola. And when they sinned, the reality changed. And remember, this is light, and when they sinned, it's flipped the aleph, which is a numerical value of 1, to ayin, which is a numerical value of 70. And so everyone born after that had a foreskin, had a skin, because that really impossible skin, had a skin on the male reproductive organ, because Adam and Eve were supposed to be, people basically were supposed to be, they were made in the image of God, which means they have the power to create. Remember, we said that in creating a baby, you have the mother, the father, and God. And the mother and father give the baby the body, the physical. But God gives them, every baby, a soul. And again, it just depends on who you are, where you are, where your soul comes from, how holy it is on the spectrum, okay? And the soul of a Jew comes from a different source than these nations, okay? So when Noah was born, he was born without a foreskin. He was born basically perfect, spiritually perfect, and God saved him and repopulated the whole world after the flood of all the wicked people, all the wicked generations that forgot about God and started worshiping other forces. But remember, he comes from this generation also. He was saved too, and he was wicked. Ham was wicked. He sinned in the ark, and then after, when they got out of the ark, he sinned against Noah, and he was cursed. His line was cursed, okay? And Noah blessed Japhet with the physical, because he didn't get, there's only one blessing, and it went to Shem. And so he's blessed with everything physical. Like, their focus is physical. That's the YOLO. You only live once, which is also, by the way, not true, because there is reincarnation, and we can talk about that. So, but their philosophy, the other nations, is YOLO. You only live once. You should do anything you can in this world. You only live once. But we know, because we got the blessing through this line, and because God is directly interested in us and our inheritance from Yaakov, because Esav sold the inheritance to Yaakov, he got the blessing, and we have the eternal. So after the 7 years, there's going to be an eternal Olam Haba. It's called Olam Haba in Hebrew, which I wrote in English, but it's Olam Haba. Olam is world, Haba is the next. So there's going to be an eternal world, and it depends on what we do. And so Noah was born without the foreskin, spiritually perfect. And then when we got to Avram, okay, Avraham in Hebrew, Abraham in English, when he started looking for God and he would not give up because he realized that this didn't make sense, there had to be a creator, and God befriended Abraham and made a covenant with him. What he did was he changed his name from Avram to Abraham, Avraham. He added the hey. God's name is, what do I have? God's name. God has many names or different combinations of the letters, but the one that he told that we are given is Yud Hey, and then Vav, and then Hey. So these are the letters of God's name that he added the Hey, yeah, the Hey from his name. He added it. He gave it to Avram and changed him to Avraham, and then took him out of the system and said, from you I'm going to make a nation. I'm going to enslave them first by some people, and it would happen to be in Egypt, because it's like that's a longer story to explain why we were down there. Well, I'm not going to get into that right now, but he said there's going to be a sign of who your line is. There's going to be a sign, and the sign Ot Hilo Olam. It will be, there's going to be a few signs, okay? Ot is a sign. Hilo Olam, forever, for all our generations, because we're supposed to pass it all down through our lineage, and through, when we got the Torah, we had exactly this, the instructions, and there's some things that we have to do, and the Brit Milah, which is the circumcision, it's not just like in a hospital where you just cut it off. There's a whole thing that you do there to show that you're doing it because God commanded us to do it. And it, again, is to remove the skin that was added here when they sinned and the reality fell, to become perfect again, how God made us without that skin on the male reproductive organ, because with that organ we're creating just like God created. Okay, so the skin is like the klipa. Remember this klipa? Oh my goodness. Well, it's like the klipa. He said that there's basically, it's like a skin or a peel on a fruit that separates the fruit from like the outside. And depending on how thick this klipa is, it filters the light, how much light gets into our world or into our person as a person. We can have a klipa on us, on our soul, or on our hearts and our minds, and just an impurity that separates us from the spiritual light of God. And so one of the things that we're commanded to do is to remove that skin. We remove that klipa. And so that's why Abraham had Ishmael before he was circumcised. And then he was circumcised, he got the covenant, and he had Isaac. And then that tradition was kept all the generations. Now again, when the tribes were enslaved in Egypt, when they went down to Egypt, a lot of these tribes mixed in with the Egyptians, and they stopped circumcising their sons. Only Levi continued to circumcise the sons, and Levi's line. So, and Moses was from Levi, and Moses was born without the Ola, without the skin, the foreskin. Okay, so, and he became the Mashiach, the Messiah of that generation, which they led the tribes out of Egypt and into their land of Israel, where God has his eyes on Israel, and that's how the system worked. Now I want to explain that in today's day, because of this, because we don't have a temple anymore. We had two temples, the first temple and the second temple. They were both destroyed. From the Levies, from the tribe of Levi, we have the Kohens, the Kohen priests. And they were the ones that did all the sacrifices, and they did all the priestly duties in the temples, okay? And what those sacrifices and stuff were doing was that every time Israel sinned, every single day they would sacrifice something on the altar, and I'm not going to go into all the different kinds of sacrifices, to forgive the sin. So instead of the sin causing this klipa to build up in every person and separate them from God, the Kohen priests were basically erasing it every day. And that's how the light stayed in the world. They were just erasing it. But because they're at a certain point, the sins got so much, and the temples were destroyed. Okay, and so we don't have that anymore. But what we have is the Kohanim in any community. Okay, even if we're in the exile and the diaspora, we have Kohanim that should be from the line of Levi and Kohen. That's why they usually can trace their lineage back to Aaron Kohen, Aaron, Moses' brother. When we got the Torah, they took the Kohen and the Levies were the ones that worked in the Beit Hamikdash, the temples, and so their lineage still today is supposed to be the Kohanim, where in the prayer services that we have that are instead of the Beit Hamikdash, the temples, the Kohens are supposed to give us the blessing. That's a Kohen blessing in the prayer services. Okay, so now let me just explain to you why. If you have a convert, okay, who is not from this lineage, a convert, a real convert, they're called Gerei Tzedek. They're like the righteous converts from the other nations. When they want to come into Israel, and there have been a lot, because they recognize that there's one God and they want to serve God. So if they want to convert, they have to do the brit, but that doesn't just mean taking off the foreskin. They have to do a lot of other things. And also, again, like I said, the covenant also is Shabbat. Shabbat, ot hi le'olam. This is the indication for everybody who is a Jew, that they keep Shabbat. So up until not too long ago, every Jew did keep Shabbat, and it was a shanda, it was a busha, it was not heard of. If you didn't keep Shabbat, then you were ostracized from the Jewish community, because it's so important. The Shabbat and the covenant of the circumcision, which also means not just taking off the foreskin, but being careful where you put your reproductive organ, and you can't be gay. That reproductive organ and the act of being together, a man and a woman, is holy. It is intended to because of procreation. It is because with that organ and with the seed, the sperm you are creating people, and God is putting a holy soul into the baby. Please bear with me while I explain this, because I know that it's not like how we think of it when we grow up here without all of the Torah information. But once you learn everything, once you start to understand the differences between Kodesh L'Chol, holy and unholy, and these nations, and the nation of Israel, and the blessing, then we understand why Shabbat is a source of blessing. Again, we're talking about the blessing that only Israel has. And Shabbat is a source of the blessing. And so we keep Shabbat, we keep the Brit, and keeping the Brit also means sexual morality. You have to be very careful, and on a spiritual level, when there's something happens to any seed that is spilled, not with your wife, okay? And also we're commanded not to marry any of their daughters, because the lineage, basically, how do you know if you're a Jew? It's from the mother. But the line goes down through the father, okay? So it's, I'm not going to get into it, but if you have somebody who converts to Judaism and does all this, there's a certain way they have to do it, and that's why the Orthodox, if you do it Orthodox and you keep Shabbat after you become a Jew, and you go into the mikveh, which we can talk about later what that does, and you get circumcised, and you keep the Brit, meaning you're not gay, okay? You're not gay, and you're not mechalel Shabbat, and you're not, and by the way, these nations are not allowed to celebrate Shabbat. Only we are, because it's a source of blessing. And they don't have the blessing, okay? They have everything physical. They can do whatever they want. They're supposed to only do the 7 laws of Noah, but at this point we see that they don't. They're quite evil. There's a whole, I mean, now there's a question: what is a woman and what is a man? Now, any man is basically a woman, and this is because also Eve was the one that sinned first with the apple. It's not even an apple, but okay, it wasn't even an apple. I'm not even going to say that. That's just popular, like, folklore of what it was. But what happened was she sinned, and she caused Adam to sin. Okay? But they both sinned, but she was the start. And so what we've seen throughout history, and especially modern history, is like kind of an attack on the woman being, they make it, because good and evil is mixed, they make it sound like it's good. Like, oh, you be liberated, and have a career, and don't have kids, and you don't need kids, and you actually don't even need to get married. Have multiple sexual partners, and who cares, and everything's good. You can, we're all equal. And now we're so equal that a man is a woman, and a woman is a man, and you can't even say there's man and woman. There's a whole spectrum of what that is. And even I saw, like, in, I think it was Denmark, like some woman professor, I think, went to jail, or she got sentenced to jail for 3 years for saying that men cannot have babies. And now there's a whole, like, people who are pregnant thing, and it's just chaos, because again, this system without God, it eventually goes to chaos, which was the same as the flood, which is the same as storm. It becomes evil with no laws, with no order, the proper order, because they're not getting the blessing, because this klipa is getting very, very, very thick. So if you have somebody who converts, who is not keeping these things, who is not actually a righteous convert, then they are not considered Jews. They're not considered Jews. So when they die, it's like Avraham is said to meet our soul. When the soul and the body separate, when the soul and the body separate, the soul goes to where Avraham is buried. Avraham, all of our forefathers and mothers are buried in the cave of the Machpelah, and we go there, and that's the entrance to Gan Eden. So again, the land of Israel is significant. It's God's land, and it is also the opening to paradise, to Gan Eden, where the souls go to wait for the Messianic era and after, because also during the Messianic era, there's going to be Tchiat HaMetim, the dead will become alive again. God will make them alive, everyone alive. And by the way, we'll see them just how they were, because then we will all know that they were dead. Like, we'll see our dead relatives and friends come back to life in the exact same bodies, and everyone will be healed, and everyone will come back as they were before the 7th millennial. I will talk about time in another short video very soon, because yes, we think that the world is way older, and we think we're in the year 2023, but really we're in the year, and this is of the new era, AD or whatever it is, and we're really in the year 5,000. I always get this wrong, but 780 something 3. Let's just say I'm going to look at this up and tell you exactly. So we're at the end of the 5th millennial, and I can explain all this stuff about time, but it's extremely complicated, because remember we said that the universe basically is a 5D hyperspace, and it's the 3D that we talk about here that we know. Time is another dimension, and the spiritual is another dimension. So 3, 4, 5 dimensions. And we will talk about time, because time was created, God created time. So a lot of things that happened in the 6 days that God created the universe, it's like relativity. It's just like a dog, like 1 year of our year is equal to 7 dog years. That's what we think, right? I mean, I don't know who said that once, but we always say things like that, like, oh, how old's your dog? Well, he's 1 year old in our time, but he's 7 dog years. So it's kind of like the same thing, okay? So what I'm trying to say here for the people, especially of Calgary, okay, is that in your conservative, quote unquote, conservative shul, you are being led not by anyone who is actually a Jew, okay? He's gay. I have nothing against him personally, and even these nations, they can do whatever they want. I mean, they have no inheritance to get, and they have no blessing to get personally and as nations, unless they come out of that system. But Israel is different, and we're commanded to be different. We're commanded to be holy, and we're commanded to make a difference between holy and unholy. Bein Israel ve'amim acharim, the other nations. And so it would be one thing if you had amongst them the Israelites in, let's say, a community that are not fully actually Jews, and that's what we have here in Israel too. We have a big mix of people, and especially also these people. And it's hard to really know who is a Jew at this point, unless you're shomer, unless you're keeping Shabbat, and keeping all the Brit, and keeping the Torah, and learning the Torah, and keeping all the laws, and doing the mitzvot, and refraining from doing other things. But the conservative shul in Calgary has somebody from here leading them, and you're not getting this blessing. You're not getting this blessing. And it's hard enough when you're outside of Israel, because your prayers anyway have to go through the angel that's on top of that nation, and that depends on the merit of the people. So when you pray with a minyan is 10 people, 10 men, and there's a reason there is a difference between the men and women, and it doesn't mean that the men are more important, or it's just different, okay? So if it depends on the merit of the 10 people. If you're with 10 people praying, where you are actually all Israel Jews, then God is hearing your prayer. It still has to go up through the angel, but it is accepted. That's hard to explain how that works. But if you're praying alone without the 10 men, you're not in a whatever, here it depends solely on your merit if your prayer will be accepted or not, unless you're in Israel, in the land of Israel. And again, that is why I came here, because I saw this situation. I learned, and I saw also, especially during COVID, that we're in a scary situation, and I came here to pray directly to God and to beg God to help us and to help everyone who's out here who may not see or know any of this, because I didn't see or know any of this. So I came here, and that's why also, by the way, I haven't really wanted to leave, because spiritually speaking, I'm scared to leave a little bit. I want to continue learning and doing and praying and hoping that this won't happen, and that the Mashiach will come. Or at least, if there's another scenario, if the Mashiach doesn't come and save us, Eventually he will come. But there's some things that can happen that's going to be like, like the Third World War, and it's all written in the prophets, in our books of the prophets. So I'm saying just be very careful, especially I personally, like, I wouldn't go to the conservative shul, because it's like you are basically wasting your time. First of all, to get any blessing, you want to be keeping Shabbat, and Shabbat is literally 24 hours. That's it. Where you're not living like the rest of the week. You're taking the day off to get your blessing for the rest of the week. And if you go and pray with a congregation which is beneficial to you, then it would be beneficial to you and to go to pray with real Jews. And I say real Jews because the homosexual gay goy who is leading the congregation of Israel in Calgary, in the conservative, that's upside down. You're not getting your blessings, because the blessing comes through the line of Levi, the Kohens, the Kohanim. That guy's not a Kohen. Okay, he might be a very nice person. He might be a great thinker. He might have a very nice understanding and interpretations of the Torah. But there's a spiritual dimension also to the Torah, where it's wisdom, not just knowledge, but wisdom. And I can explain that at another time also. But so I'm cautioning anyone who, and I'm not even talking about Reform Judaism. Reform Judaism with the women rabbis and this, it's an illusion. It's a delusion of this world. Remember, we said that this world is a world of lies, and it's the world where good and evil got mixed up. That's mixed up. You can't have a lesbian female rabbi and expect to get any blessings if you understand where the blessing comes from and what the blessing is and who we are and where we came from. And why we do this, and why we keep this. Okay, so it's all about knowledge. And there's a great lecture that I sent called Faith and Knowledge, or Faith versus Knowledge, by Rabbi Yinon Kalazan on YouTube. And he explains that we're not expected to believe in God. We're expected to learn and know God through the Torah, because God gave us a Torah. It's our birthright to know that, and then to practice. And the more we practice and learn, we will understand and we will believe. We will understand, we will get wisdom. So we'll have knowledge by learning, that's our part, but he will give us wisdom. So it's like we said, when we, that the spiritual and the spiritual and the physical interact again, like the flame and the candle. And on the physical part, we send up our prayers, and God sends down the blessings. So our part is to do our part, which includes learning about what to do and how to do it. And we know that. It's not just we think we can do whatever and that's good enough. No, it's clearly outlined in the Torah and in our traditions and through through our fathers' traditions, okay? And so that was a lot longer than what I expected to do. And I'm going to do another one about time, okay?